The New York Knicks come to Sacramento and absolutely demolish the Kings 133-104. It was a game that I didn't expect the Kings to win, but I also obviously didn't expect the Kings to get blown out this badly. I think it was as close to a scheduled loss as you could get for the Kings, but that absolutely doesn't excuse how badly they got beat right from the jump. But I think you can chalk this loss up to a few things. One, I mean, the Knicks are just a much better team than the Kings. That's the reality of the situation, and that's kind of what I've been doing recently with the Kings is adjusting my expectations because right now the Knicks are third in the Eastern Conference and the Kings are ninth in the Western Conference. And the Kings being ninth in the Western Conference, that's like exactly where they should be. They're right now the ninth best team in the Western Conference. And so I don't expect them on the second night of a back-to-back after an overtime game to come out and beat a Knicks team that's hungry for a win because they went 0-3 to the other three California teams. Even without Jalen Brunson, this Knicks team is just better. I think the part that's more concerning to me are the lineup issues because like I said, the Kings just came out. That first quarter was horrible. They got blown out from the jump, 37-22 in the first quarter. And I had voiced my concerns before about when Malik Monk comes back, what's the team going to look like? Because the team had been the best defensive team in the league for the past 7 games. And now you have Malik Monk coming back straight into the starting lineup. And when I saw he was in the starting lineup, it's great that he's back, but it did disappoint me because it just felt like this was the perfect opportunity to say, well, you're coming back from injury. Let's just bring you off the bench here. And then maybe he just stays on the bench. I feel like it's kind of hard to take someone out of the starting lineup. This was the perfect opportunity to get him on the bench, get him back in that role. Because Malik himself was our leading scorer, 21 points. That's not the problem, obviously. But the problem is when Malik Monk's in the starting lineup over a guy like Keon Ellis, you're not setting the tone defensively. And the Knicks were able to just get so comfortable, shoot 55% from three, 22 for 40. Obviously, some of that is just, you get a little bit unlucky that the Knicks are just hot tonight. But also, some of it is because you're just letting them get wide open looks early on, let them get confident. And they just didn't feel any physicality from the Kings defense. And I think another big problem is Malik Monk comes in, and like I said, he leads the team in scoring with 21 points. He had 18 field goal attempts. Zach LaVine in 36 minutes had 10 field goal attempts. Zach LaVine has been playing some amazing basketball as of late. And Malik Monk comes back in, and then all of a sudden Zach LaVine's not getting any shot attempts. So that's the problem. The problem is that when you insert Malik Monk into this lineup, it's just not balanced in the slightest. And so now you're taking away shots from Zach LaVine. The perfect player for the Kings to have is a point guard who can defend and then set other players up and obviously set Zach LaVine up and set DeMar DeRozan up while also being a defensive player. That's actually why I wanted the Kings to go get Lonzo when they did trade for Zach LaVine, even though we really would have been the Sacramento Bulls at that point. But I think you saw how successful the Kings had been in the past few games. Obviously, we weren't playing a team like the New York Knicks, but the defense is just so much better. You look at the Nuggets game. I mean, that's a game where we have to really game plan against a potent offense and obviously an MVP in Jokic. And the Kings were able to game plan well and execute that game plan defensively, even though they didn't come out with that win. And just recently, they've been able to stay in these games with their defense. And that's the thing that's been super encouraging and really fun to watch because it's a change. And I didn't expect them to continue being the best defense in the league because obviously they're going to be playing a tougher schedule coming up. I said after that Clippers game, the 3 most important players to this defense are Keegan Murray, Keon Ellis, and Jake LaRavia. And so this game, Jake LaRavia is out with an injury, and Keon Ellis gets removed from the starting lineup and only plays 18 minutes, with some of those minutes even being in garbage time. And the Knicks hang 133 on you. So you go from 62 minutes against the Clippers combined between Keon Ellis and Jake LaRavia to 18, and that's the change in the defense. When the Kings traded for Zach LaVine, when they traded Fox, they could have picked a path where they went all in on DeMar, Monk, and Sabonis and traded for guys that fit around them. They didn't do that, right? They traded for Zach LaVine. And so they chose Zach LaVine. But it's like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too by getting Zach LaVine, but then also still starting Monk and also still starting DeRozan. And that just, it doesn't work. I just think it was the perfect game, a game that the Kings were probably going to lose anyway, but it was the perfect game to illustrate how important Keon Ellis and Jake LaRavia have been to this team in the much bigger roles that they've been playing recently. That's been a big reason that the Kings have been winning games, or at least close in games like the Nuggets game and the Clippers game. And I think just when you started the first quarter, right away, you could see the help was just late. The rotations weren't there. On one single possession, I saw Malik Monk not go after a rebound because I think he thought a teammate had it, and that gave up possession. And then also not go after another loose ball because he thought a teammate had it, both times losing possession. And it's like, I'm not trying to pick on Malik Monk here, but it's one of those situations where he's being put into a role that completely exposes all of his flaws. He's not a perfect player, and so when you put him in a situation where he is being asked to do a lot more defending and rebounding, playing alongside of DeRozan and LaVine and obviously Valanciunas right now, those flaws are just going to be much more exposed. The Kings tried defensively putting Keegan on Cat, putting Valanciunas on Hart as expected, and it was very easy to see why they did this, because early on we saw Valanciunas get matched up against Cat, whether it was because of a switch or just a cross match in transition, and Cat scored on Valanciunas both times he got that matchup. And so I mean, I think that defensive strategy made the most sense, and I think it maybe even could have worked if you had better defensive lineups around that. But of course, Josh Hart had to go 4 for 6 from 3, just like Russell Westbrook went 3 for 7 from 3 when we tried the exact same thing. And you even had Josh Hart hitting like a step back 3. But after like an early Keegan 3 and a nice LaVine pocket pass to Valanciunas for a dunk, the Kings just went cold. Their only points were coming at the free throw line, but they missed 8 straight field goal attempts. They were getting good looks in the mid-range, and they just couldn't knock them down. The Kings finally scored when it was Keon Ellis hitting a bailout midi at the end of the shot clock, which he actually did twice in this game. There were some good things that the Kings were doing, like LaVine had a really nice steal. You also had DeMar like hustling to save a ball from out of bounds, but everything that the Kings did was just a little off. Like every rotation was a little bit slow. Every mid-range shot from DeMar early on was off, and Monk the same. And even when DeMar hustled to save the ball from going out of bounds, which shocked me, I was like, whoa, DeMar I don't know how he got to that ball. Like, I don't expect that from DeMar. He saves it. But I think LaVine was so shocked as well. He didn't expect the ball to be coming towards him, so he like bobbles the ball out of bounds. So everything was just a little off. And Deuce McBride caught fire, which is like every part of this game is just exactly what I expected in the worst ways. McBride ended up going 5 for 5 in the first quarter, 3 for 3 from 3. Just couldn't miss. And you had like Trey Lyles coming in, turning the ball over, going right to a Knicks layup. Did make up for it with a 3 right after, but then the Kings like got out in transition. It was like a 3-on-2, and just the worst spacing, the most awkward transition fast break play of all time, leads to nothing. They were fouling too much on the defensive end. And I think the biggest problem with the Kings defense was they just weren't being physical at all. And really throughout the second quarter, they like tried to go to these zones, tried to go to these 2-3 zones, and it didn't work at all, because that just exacerbated the problem of not being physical. Because now in zone, you don't have a single man to guard, so you're definitely not being physical with anyone. And the Knicks just kept completing these interior passes. They were getting into the paint and just catching the ball for free and getting wide open looks right next to the rim. Nobody around them, no physicality. The Knicks were like driving into the paint and just completing these paint to paint passes, which you just can't let passes like that happen so easily, so frequently, and the Kings were allowing that. Offensively, though, the Kings did start to get it going. DeMar hit a few shots, Malik hit a few shots. I thought DeMar offensively, like it looked like he was getting to his spots against OG Anunoby. OG's a great defender, but DeMar actually was doing a really good job against him. Just early on, he missed some shots that you expect him to make, but he was really getting to his spots. He drew 3 fouls, all of them non-shooting fouls, like trying to bait them in and then not getting the call to go to the line. He was definitely not happy about that. That definitely led to his technical later on. And the Kings finally got a few stops, and I think DeMar was a big catalyst for the Kings going on a bit of a run to try to get back into the game after they went down 15 in the first quarter. You also had Monk getting a nice reverse finish and Devin Carter getting a steal and DeMar pushing that ahead to Monk for a dunk. So they got down 20 early in that second quarter, and they started working their way back into it, and it looked like they might make a game of it. We didn't see any Markelle Fultz minutes until garbage time. It was just straight to Devin Carter, and I definitely thought he made a positive impact from getting the steal that led to the Malik Monk dunk to hustling for another loose ball and drawing a clear path foul as he pushed it forward to Valanciunas. The free throws still need work. It doesn't look great. He went 1 for 2 on those free throws on the clear path foul. But I thought he was also crucial in sparking a bit of a run. The effort, the energy that he provided that the team was obviously lacking at that point. And the Kings were able to draw fouls, get into the bonus super early on. Like Monk just drew a foul on McBride on the perimeter and just went to the free throw line with over 6 minutes left in the quarter. So that could have been something that the Kings took advantage of, but they really didn't. They went on a 10-0 run, but the Knicks responded, and it was just getting into the paint, completing those interior passes way too easily. And the offense for the Kings just went cold. There were some really bad turnovers, some stagnant offense, and the only real offense the Kings were getting at that point was Valanciunas getting inside, whether that's on a putback. He had one nice, Malik had one nice play where he fed Valanciunas inside. But defensively, you had Keegan guarding Karl-Anthony Towns. And Cat, on one play, drove against him, and Valanciunas was just sitting in the paint. So, like, this is exactly how it's supposed to go, right? Keegan's guarding Cat on the perimeter, and Valanciunas is there for the help in the paint, and Cat just goes straight into both of them, goes right around them, draws the weakest foul of all time. Like, and I'm saying it's a foul, but like a weak foul, so he just easily gets the and one, going by 2 guys. The help defense was just not good at the rim, and some of that was on Keegan too, like not funneling him into a lane for Valanciunas to then be there for the help. But the Kings kept being late on the help. They tried to draw a ton of charges, and they just kept getting called for blocking fouls, and they all were blocking fouls. And Keegan had one at the start of the game that kind of it annoyed me. Like, drawing a charge is great, you know. It's a momentum play. It's a hype play. Like, everyone can get behind it. But Keegan tries to draw so many charges. It's great when he does it, but like, he's big enough against some of these smaller guards that he's trying to draw charges against. Like, just play straight up defense. I mean, he's big enough even against bigger players to just play straight up defense. And I lost count of how many failed charge attempts the Kings took. Keegan had, I think, a couple. Lyles definitely had a couple. Devin Carter for sure. And so instead of, just putting your hands up, trying to play solid defense, you're trying to get these calls. And instead, it's going the other way, and you're getting into foul trouble. Keegan got into foul trouble in the first quarter, 2 fouls, and Isaac Jones had to come in. I don't know if that was the plan initially, to have Isaac Jones play minutes early on. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But then you had a couple plays in a row where Keon Ellis got called for fouls, and DeMar didn't get calls on one end, so DeMar gets teed up. They did look like pretty ridiculous fouls on Keon there, but the frustration was palpable. You had the refs, "You suck" chant, and I think that's probably built up over the last 4 games from that sequence in this game. That was obviously frustrating, but I think that's more about what happened last game, what happened in the Nuggets game, that has people a little on edge about the officiating. Fair enough. There were a couple threes being knocked down by LaVine and by Monk to try to keep the Kings kind of in the game, and we were only down 15 at halftime. And to start the third quarter, we made a switch defensively. Keegan went on to Deuce McBride because he was cooking us. Valanciunas went back onto Cat. And the Kings did go on a little bit of a run, despite allowing OG Anunoby to go coast to coast and get to the line, attack Valanciunas in space. That was a really bad defensive play from the Kings. But after that, you had a LaVine and one, and then you had Keegan right after that and one, just by himself, denying the inbound pass, stealing the ball, and getting a layup. That was a great play, and if the Kings had been able to, really capitalize and come back into this game, that would have been what I pointed to as the turning point, because it felt like it could have been. It felt like the Kings were getting back into the game, forced an early timeout, got the Kings within 12. I think the Kings might have gotten within like 11 or 10 at some point, but the Knicks just responded right back. And it was with a flurry of threes. Also, Valanciunas trying to guard Karl-Anthony Towns. You could clearly see why that was not the initial matchup. In space, that's rough. Valanciunas had one foul, trying to run out on Cat. And then the next possession, he just said, all right, I'm not going to guard him. And Cat splashes a three. Like, what are you doing? You got to guard the guy. Because Valanciunas, he was good inside, both offensively and defensively, like when Cat was trying to get inside against him one-on-one, but obviously that's not enough. You got to guard the perimeter, and the Knicks absolutely made us pay for not being able to guard the perimeter. And you had Hart hitting a step back three, then LaVine turned it over to an OG three, and that was pretty much it. Like, that's where I feel like the game ended. The Kings had a couple of shot clock violations in a row, just going nowhere. They just got whatever they wanted offensively. Monk did hit back-to-back threes to keep us within 20. So it was like, okay, well, we kind of have a shot here a little bit. But then the Knicks just shut the door, and Malik Monk went back to the locker room, and I don't know what's going on with that. So that's great. But the game was clearly lost there in the third quarter. And so the fourth quarter was kind of funny because it's like 12 minutes. Are you just going to throw all your bench guys in for 12 straight minutes? Neither team wanted to do that. And obviously the Knicks didn't, because they're not feeling quite comfortable enough for that yet. And so it's just like LaVine out there with Isaac Jones and them, and it's Cat out there with some bench guys. You had some nice LaVine and Isaac Jones dunks to bring up the vibes a little bit. They did take away one of Isaac Jones' dunks because of a foul that the Knicks committed prior. And we saw this multiple times, like on the clear path foul where Devin Carter threw it ahead to Valanciunas, and Valanciunas dunked it, but it's taken away by a foul. And so obviously on that one, it's like, okay, a clear path foul, at least we get some advantage. But why? It annoys me that the NBA doesn't play advantage in these situations when your team clearly has a dunk. And the reason I really say that is because look at the plays. There were 2 plays at the start of this game, one for each team, where each team went up for a layup and the ball just like went around the rim and came out. And then the ref waits for it to come out to blow the whistle. And they were so clearly waiting for it. And so I'm like, so on things that are actually fouls, you play almost like, instead of playing advantage, you play disadvantage. It's so odd. They wait for the ball to go out or in before they decide what they're going to do. But when there's actually going to be a dunk, then they don't let it go. Because the whole point of them waiting is to like keep the flow of the game going. But it makes no sense that they do it for those types of layups, but then not when it's actually an advantage for the team that's getting fouled. But anyways, it was funny how long the Knicks kept their starters in this game. They kept Cat out there for a while, and they did the same thing last time the Knicks were blowing us out. And the Knicks starters, like, they took Cat out and put the rest of the starters back in, and they were just rolling the ball up the court. I'm like, what are we doing here? The game is over. Let's play, Stop rolling the ball up the court. I want to see our young guys play. Tibbs, get your starters out of the game. I want to see some basketball. But LaVine was getting some shots up early in the fourth quarter. And I was like, so we have to put LaVine in garbage time because he got no shots the rest of the game? And that's where I was really like, this starting lineup just is so unsustainable. Like Zach LaVine is our guy. He's our the guy that the number one option offensively we're building around right now in terms of scoring. And he's taking 10 shots in a game. And some of those were in garbage time. Like that's not, we can't keep playing like that. We did see Isaiah Crawford hit a three. We saw Isaac Jones hit a three in garbage time. We also saw all the Knicks guys just continue to bomb threes and get crazy bounces on the rim. They just couldn't miss. But yeah, a rough loss. But it's not like it was an unexpected loss. When you expect it, it doesn't feel as bad. All this game did was continue to expose what we already knew, that the starting lineup that we keep throwing out there, whether it's Sabonis or Valanciunas, doesn't matter. That doesn't make a difference. It's not it just doesn't work on either end of the floor, really. We need someone who's going to set LaVine up, who's going to set DeRozan up, and hopefully, Sabonis comes back, and then he can do that. And then you should just start Keon Else. And hey, I mean, if you want to start Jake LaRavia, that's fine by me once he comes back. If you want to go big, that's fine. But anyways, we can go through the box score real quick. Monk had 21 in his return, but then exited to the locker room, which isn't great. LaVine, 10 shots, had 17 points. He shot it efficiently, and that's the problem. He needs more shots. Valanciunas had a double-double, 10 points, 13 rebounds, 4 for 8 from the field. I mean, he was really solid inside. It was just when he got into space. Unfortunate that Josh Hart decided to knock down his threes this game. And that's one of the funny things about basketball, like especially when you don't have a versatile team defensively. Like you just have to pick something in terms of a game plan defensively, and then sometimes that is centered around whether one guy is making his shots or not, and he was. Not that it really would have mattered, because like we got beat in a whole bunch of other ways, but if the Kings had actually been playing a little better, then it would have been a real problem then. Keegan, 9 points on 4 for 11 from the field. 1 for 6 from 3, not a great shooting night from him. He was getting them up though. And then DeMar had 11 and 5 assists. Off the bench, Isaac Jones led bench players with 19 minutes, and points, 12 points. And every time he goes out there, like he's a solid offensive player, and he knocked down a corner three. His finishing around the rim is so good. There are still some times where like his size gets exposed defensively, and maybe his positioning isn't quite there, where he just gets caught really deep under the basket sometimes. But he's always making positive plays, especially offensively, I feel like. And then Keon had 9 points on 4 for 7. Lyles went 1 for 3 from 3. He hasn't been great from 3. And that's one of the reasons that the Kings bench has been bad. And obviously it hasn't been as bad recently because we've added guys. But Lyles not being able to knock down threes, I mean, that's a reason why he lost his spot in the rotation for a little bit before injuries happened. So it'd be nice to see him start knocking down some threes again. And the Kings now enter a stretch here that's important. Of course, every game here is important. Of course it is. But it's the Warriors, it's the Suns, and it's the Grizzlies. And those are 3 games that you can absolutely win all of those games. I'm not saying you're favored in any of those games. I mean, you'll be favored in the Suns game, but that one is also the second night of a back-to-back. But they're absolutely all winnable. And no, I don't think the Kings are going to like chase the Warriors down in the standings, but you never know. And the Phoenix game, you got to keep them back. I feel like the Kings are going to end this season in 9th. But it's definitely not out of the question that they could go up or down. And so while their schedule is tough here, I do think these next 3 games, I think it's possible. They could like go 2-1. And we got to see a bounce back here after this thumping, and because you got absolutely destroyed by the Warriors right out of the All-Star break. And so now you get a little bit of a chance at revenge here. We'll probably get an update on Sabonis tomorrow, I would guess. So we'll see about that, but the Kings, they can't run out the same starting lineup that they've been running out. Monk went back to the locker room, so maybe he won't even be healthy for this game. But if he is, they just can't start Monk, because last time we tried to put DeMar DeRozan on Jimmy Butler. And it's not like Jimmy even really exploited that. especially in the first half of that game. But that doesn't mean we should still do it again. That's a really bad matchup. I just want to see the Kings just go all in on defense. We got talented offensive players. Let them just figure it out offensively, score enough points, play your defensive guys, play them a lot of minutes. That's what I want. That's what I want for the rest of this season. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back to recap that game against the Warriors on Thursday, so I will see you guys then. Peace.